Hello everybody. We just finished the production budget in the prior video and now we're going to move on to materials. So there's a sequence to the master budget. We started off budgeting sales. Then from that we budgeted production. Now that we know how many units we're going to make, we can now figure out how much we need to buy in materials, how much labor we need to buy or hire and use, and also overhead. So we're going to do materials today. And this candle that this company makes uses the actual glass containers and also wax. So we're going to budget how many glass containers we need for that level of production and also how much wax we need for that level of production. Once we've figured out what we need and then what we have to buy, we will then make payments or map out the payments that we're going to need to make over the course of the year for those material purchases. So let's get started. So let's do glass containers. How many units are we going to produce, which is not the same as how many units we're going to sell, right? So we're going to do either plus or equals. We're going to click on production and we're going to hit enter and populate units to produce here. Notice I didn't type that in. I'm linking everything so that any of the original budget data in the yellow cells change. All of these calculations that are all linked together. Sales is going to update production, which is now going to update material budget if there is a change, if the client tells us there's a change. And we can drag this across and we can leave the relative reference because we do want it to skip a cell every time it goes to the right. Now, how many glasses do we need per candle? And that's in the recipe, so we can go back to the original budgeted data, and you could probably guess that there'll be one glass container per candle. Okay. And we want to anchor on that because in the budgeted data, the one is here. We don't want it to migrate over as we copy over. We want it to lock in on that cell. We want to have an absolute reference rather than a relative one. So I'm going to click up here and hit F4. And if you're using a Mac, you'll have to type in the $signs in front of the B and the 16 in order to lock it, since your F4 doesn't do that for you. And I can put my cursor in the lower right-hand corner of that cell, left click on my mouse and drag it over. All right, so I need, this is pretty easy math here, for 290 finished units, I need 290 glass containers, and I can copy that over. Okay, so, and we can copy that over one more. That doesn't look like heavy lifting. All right, so now we have to add the cushion or the safety stock or the desired ending that management wants. We need to know their policy. It's not something we can figure out. They have to tell us their policy. So let's go see. What is their policy for materials? We're down here in the direct materials area. Required ending for materials, which is not the same as required ending for finished goods. So the amount of cushion they need is based on how conservative or aggressive they are, but also how difficult it is to make another one if you get low. So, or how difficult it is to get more glass containers or more wax. So those two policies are not necessarily the same because it might be easier to get the wax or containers or harder to get the wax or containers compared to making a new candle if you already have those ingredients in-house. So we do have this policy. All right, so we're going to use next quarter's production needs times the policy. 15% of next quarter's production needs. Needed for production needs. All right. And so then what's needed for production is the units you're going to produce plus this cushion, the desired ending, safety stock, whatever you would like to call it. So we need this much. Do we have to buy that much? Well, we do if we started out with 0. But if we had any on hand, we don't have to buy that much because we already have some. So where would we find beginning inventory at the beginning of quarter 1? That would be ending for prior year quarter 4. And we do have that in the beginning balance sheet. So how many containers did they have on hand? They had 75 already on hand. The 115 is the dollar amount, but the 75 is the count of how many they had. All right, so we have to purchase what we need minus what we already have. Minus what we already have. And then the cost per container is given in the data. $1.10. Hit enter, and we're going to lock that one down to make an absolute reference, whereas the other ones can float across. And then the cost of the glass containers will be how many glass containers do we need times $1.10. All right. So that's quarter 1. Quarter 2, the desired ending. So the desired ending for quarter 1 was quarter 2 times the policy. So we can copy this over. Oh, what did we do? We didn't lock down that policy cell. And that's what it will look like if you don't lock it down. All right, so if you're wondering what happened there. So I went back and fixed that, and now I can drag it across, and that 15% will be retained in the calculation. So now it started out looking at C23, now still looking at C23 because I locked it down. All right, and now we know why we needed production for quarter 1 is because the ending inventory for quarter 4 depends on production from quarter 1 of the next year. So that's why we forecasted out some periods after year end so that we could do 2002, which depends on some activity in the next year. All right, and you can, again, put your cursor on the lower right, left click and hold, and you can drag that formula over or do it 4 times if you prefer. All right, now this beginning only works for the first quarter. That beginning balance sheet tells you the beginning of the year, but it doesn't tell you the beginning of each quarter, just the beginning of the year. So what do we need here? Well, it's very similar to what we did in production, that the end of quarter 1 is the same as the beginning of quarter 2. Same thing for quarter 3. The end of quarter 2 is the same as the beginning of quarter 3. And you can, of course, copy that over, make sure that those match. And so what you need minus what you already have on hand will give you how much you must buy. And we already had anchored that down with the $sign, so I can copy that over, and it'll be $1.10 all the way over. If it gives you trash over here, that's because you didn't anchor it. Go back and anchor it and then recopy it. All right, and so we can get the total cost of the glass container purchases, budgeted glass container purchases for each of the quarters now by taking how many, the count, times the cost per container. So that's your materials budget for the glass container. Okay, let's do the same for wax. The number of units to produce is the same. We're linking it here, so we know it's linking back to the original data, not typing anything in. All right, and how many ounces do we need per candle? All right, let's go back to the original data, and it looks like 4. Okay, and I'm going to anchor that because 4 is only shown in the one cell, so when I copy it across, I need it to stay locked on that cell and not float. Okay, great. So what do I need for production? So for 290 candles, I need 290 times 4 of wax. And I can copy that over. So now I know what I need for production. Now, I want a little cushion or safety stock, and we have to use management's policy, which is we want some percent of next quarter's production needs. So let's type in that formula here. We need 15% of next quarter's production needs. I'm not going to type in the 15%. I'm going to link here in case it changes. And I want my budget to update if that changes. And now I'm going to have to go back in here, and I'm going to have to anchor that, or else when I copy it across, I'm going to get weird stuff. So if you get weird stuff over here, go back and check and see if you put the $sign in it and anchor it to 23, so that each one of them is C23. All right, so the total that you need is production plus that extra cushion that management wants. We're going to comply with management's policy. All right, there you go. Now, beginning. So where are we going to get the amount of ounce that they had in the beginning inventory at the beginning of the year? We're going to get that from the beginning balance sheet. And over here to the right, how much we have the dollar amount of inventory, which is both the containers and the wax, but we just need how many ounces of wax did they have on hand. Because if they already have it, we don't have to buy the whole 1,406. We can make a purchase of 1,246 and have the 1,406 that we desire. And how much does it cost per ounce of wax they give you? We'll need to anchor that as well so that it stays on that cell as we copy that over. All right, so that's the cost of the wax in the first quarter. And so now the beginning inventory for quarter 2 is going to be the same, do you remember this, as the ending for quarter 1. Now we can copy that over. If we copy the 160 over, you're going to get trash because the 160 is looking at the beginning balance sheet. But that doesn't tell us the beginning of each quarter. It only tells us the beginning of the first quarter. So for the second, third, and fourth quarter, we have to refer to the prior month. All right, and then taking what's needed and subtracting the beginning, we get how much we're going to buy. And then hopefully we anchor the 20 cents so it's copying across correctly. And then we can get the total cost of the wax for each of the quarters. Now let's map out when we're going to pay for it. We'll do that in the next video. That's coming. So there's your materials.